All right, let's get right into the statistics vocabulary. The variable. A variable is a characteristic of interest for each person or thing in the focus group. In other words, it's really what you want to know about. And ideally, that variable is random, meaning its value is determined by choice. Some examples might be things like eye color, height, age, preferred soft drink, salary, political affiliation. When you go to collect your data, you ask individuals, or perhaps you're looking at reports to collect data. Data is the actual responses or the values you get when asking about that particular variable. So if you ask someone what is their eye color, you might get responses like blue, green, hazel, brown. If you ask them their age, you might get responses like 18, 47, 23. Whenever you're conducting a statistical research study, you have what's called the population or a particular group that you're interested in. I think about the population as being the big picture focus of the statistical research, and it includes all of the individuals, objects, or measurements whose properties are being studied. An example might be the governors of the 50 United States. A sample, because it's difficult to get information from an entire population. If you have, 9 million plus people living in Georgia, it's going to be difficult to get information from all of those individuals. So typically when we conduct research, we use a subset of the population. That subset is called a sample. It's smaller, it's more manageable, and we can actually get information from those individuals. So a sample includes some of the individual's objects or measurements that are being studied. So we might randomly select 500,000 people that were living in Georgia, or 100 GHC students that were enrolled in math 2200. This visual aid can hopefully will help you see the relationship between the population and the sample. Population is big picture, sample is a smaller group. Parameter is the numerical description of a population characteristic. It's, again, often impractical and very difficult to calculate because we cannot get information typically from every single individual within the population. The parameter is, however, fixed and is constant because the population remains the same every time that you consider it. Some examples might be that the average age of a U.S. governor is 59.5 years. A statistic is the numerical description of a sample characteristic, which is actually the second definition that we considered earlier. The value of the statistic will vary from sample to sample because the group or the members of the group are changing. However, we can use a statistic to estimate the population parameter. An example might be that 85.8% of Georgians are at least a high school graduate. Again, here's the visual aid. Notice that population is connected to parameter, and both start with P. Sample is connected to statistic, and both start with S. This table compares the population to the sample, so you can see how they're similar as well as how they're different. We're going to take a look at two quick examples, and we're going to determine the variable, the population, the parameter, the sample, and the statistics for the scenario given. Scenario 1. You want to know the average or mean amount of money first-year college students spend at ABC College on school supplies that do not include books. We randomly survey 100 first-year students at the college. What is the variable? What do you want to know about? The variable is the amount of money spent by first-year college students on school supplies that do not include books. What is the population? What's your big picture focus here? It's usually not stated in the problem, but is often implied in the scenario. The population is all first-year college students at ABC College. What is the parameter? What is the numerical measurement associated with the population that we're looking for? The average amount of money spent by first-year college students on school supplies, excluding books, at ABC College. Be sure to include the details because the details help to give the research study context. What is the sample of this research study? What's the small group that we're using to help us answer the question? The sample is the 100 randomly surveyed first-year students at ABC College. What is the statistic of the research study? The statistic is the average or the mean amount of money spent by the 100 randomly surveyed first-year college students on school supplies, excluding books, at ABC College. Scenario number 2. An insurance company would like to determine the proportion of all medical doctors who have been involved in one or more malpractice lawsuits. The company selects 500 doctors at random from a professional directory and determines the number in the sample who have been involved in a malpractice lawsuit. What's the variable? What do we want to know about? The variable is whether the medical doctor has been involved in one or more malpractice lawsuits. The population. What's the big picture focus? The population is all medical doctors that are listed in the professional directory. What is the parameter? It's the proportion of all medical doctors who've been involved in one or more malpractice lawsuits. What is the sample? The sample is the 500 medical doctors selected at random from the professional directory. What is the statistic of the research study? The statistic is the proportion of the 500 randomly selected medical doctors who've been involved in one or more malpractice lawsuits.